So welcome. I'm going to present this joint work with my colleague Alberto at the University of Trento, and we're going to talk about the practices and history of co-programming and co-production in Italy, and in particular we focus on the production of cultural services in Trentino, which is a region located in the northeast of Italy. Okay, and the approach and the literature we refer to builds on the debates, the most recent debate, in fact, that has recorded some practices that have been tested in the recent past, and between the 90s and early 2000s, there was an era of conventions for the production of meritorious goods in general. And these conventions were a first attempt to co-program and co-plan. And another good practice of public-private collaboration is represented by the management of the cultural policy set by Trentino. This is why we chose this case. And in this area, the province has given itself an innovative system that reach thousands of people in urban as well as in remote areas, and it did so by developing a number of thematic cultural platforms, including museums, theaters, libraries, and music schools, on which we will focus, and the voluntary non-profit sector on the choirs, brass bands, etc. And for each of these platforms, in fact, the cultural production is coordinated by a unique system of public-private solutions. And this approach was developed prior to the national legislation and placed a strong emphasis on the idea of sharing. Sharing with community constituencies, and thus interacting closely with the private non-profit organizations and localized assets, therefore, that were already working to produce cultural services. So this approach, this policy approach to co-production and co-planning was innovative with respect to the dominant one at national level, but also later at European level, because the dominant approach was focusing on public bids or service, alternatively, service production entirely administered by the public authorities. The music school system has proved to be an especially interesting case. We are studying this with a biannual approach using mixed methods that we have summarized in these slides. And here we are using some of the data that we have collected on the, from the schools. You can see this is their location across the territory. They were all created between the 80s and 90s. In the 80s, there was the institution of the registry that defined who had access to public funding, and in the 90s, there was the definition of teaching standards and the pedagogy used by music schools, which in fact have produced the positive effect on the territory of giving access to thousands of students every year, directly or indirectly through teaching happening also for other organizations like brass bands, but also going to teach inside public schools, so in primary schools and junior schools, to the students there. So here you see the data only of the students enrolled in the 13 music schools in 2018, over 5,000, and about 2,000 students from brass bands. Public funding in 2019 was 5,600 million euros. This covers about 70% of the budget of schools. This system is complementary to the Conservatoires Filière, but also to public schooling, generic public schooling. It has a number of elements of efficiency. It increases the efficiency of the system in producing music education. Especially what we have found is that this co-production and co-planning system eliminates barriers of access to the service in terms of age, instrument choice, and musical taste. They offer a variety of music instruments that students can choose from in terms of prior preparation for entering the school and in terms of geographical locations. Since the schools are present all over the territory, unlike the vocational music schools in the public system that are only present in the two main organic centers. Co-production works alongside two cooperation streamlines, cooperation within the organizations between teachers or teachers and students, since these organizations take the form of cooperatives, mostly worker cooperatives or associations of students and teachers. Cooperation can be, of course, detected as highly important in the collaboration between the schools and the public authority. And the aim is to provide continuity to music education. What we have found is that the system of co-planning and co-production is characterized by strong interdependencies. So the schools depend on the public sector for funding and standards, but the public sector also depends on the schools for providing diffused music education across the territories. It relies on their organizational structures and capabilities to actually meet the educational standards and to meet the financial requirements that the province requests for transferring funds. So thank you very much for your attention and for any further information, please read our paper on the CIRIEC website. Thank you.